Hey guys, welcome back to Grady's Garage. So in today's episode, we're going to be solving an issue that is honest and truthfully not really an issue. So in today's video, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking my Harbor Freight chop saw and my Harbor Freight bandsaw, and we're going to attempt to make a table, cut table for them. So first things first, let's go ahead and kind of go over what we're going to be using for material and for, well, what's going to be mounted to the table. So in front of me is the Century Machinery 1 horsepower. I think it's like a 4x6 is what they rate it at or something like that. Horizontal or vertical metal cutting bandsaw. And then also we have the Bauer 14-inch chop saw, which I love this thing, despite the fact that it spins too quickly for what I'm doing. I'm using the 66 tooth carbide blade, so that has kind of turned into a dedicated aluminum cutting saw, but it's still there if I need to cut it with, cut some metal. I realistically want to swap this over to a Evolution chop saw, miter chop saw, whatever it's labeled as, but it's the 14-inch blade. I do want to swap over to that because that one spins slower, but it's also got a little bit more torque from what I was told. And you won't wear out the 66 tooth carbide blades as quickly because I've already been through 2 of these blades and they're very, very expensive. So what material are we going to be building this thing out of? Well, so I more or less have everything already laid out. What we're going to be using is I had a small surplus. Well, I say surplus. I had a whole stick of this 2x2. This is, I think it's like 16th wall or 16 gauge. I'll have to look at the sheet and I'll put it on the screen. I'm pretty sure this is 16 gauge 2x2. The legs are going to be constructed out of this 1x1. I believe this is 8th wall tubing. I had a surplus of this laying around as well. I've got some 2-inch 3/8 flat bar. Kind of overkill for the crossover, but it's what I've got. And then same thing for the feet. This is 3/8 and then just cutting a 2x2 or close to a 2x2. Measurements as of right this moment, we are at 12 feet long total. We are at 1 foot wide exact. The legs, they're going to be 30 inches. Well, we're going to go ahead and grab this frame. We're going to throw it up here on the table. I need to clear this table off a little bit. What we're going to be using to weld this table up, because I do not, well, I could hook it up, but I really don't feel like changing my wire out. I'm going to go ahead and hook up my 7525 argon mix flux core wire, 035. We're going to go ahead and run dual shield on it. So yeah, let's go ahead and get the camera set up. I'm going to get the table cleared off real quick, and then actually I'll get the table cleared off. We'll pick the camera back up, and we'll start throwing this frame together. So, see you in a second. Another thing to take in consideration is I am going to take the top part that's getting the plate mounted to it, and I'm going to grind it flat. That way there's no bumps or misalignment when you put the plate on top. So yes, you see me welding this thing up, but don't worry, I am going to grind this thing down before we're done. Please. All right, so next thing on the agenda is the feet. I got to figure out how exactly I'm wanting to do these feet. I know the general shape, but I need to figure out the not so fun part, and that is the angles that everything will be at. All right, so legs are pretty much done. I'm gonna go ahead, I need to swap camera batteries, and then we're gonna pick this back up. I think what we're gonna do is I gotta figure out how to utilize the table. I don't know, we'll get resituated. Let me change batteries and then we'll get back to it. All right, so, will camera work? Yeah, it's been a minute, I already got it. So, yes, I rushed and I wasn't paying attention. I forgot to take into account for the welds, which the tube is bent a little bit. That's just factory. There's nothing I can do about that. But the legs do stick up just a little. They're pretty square. However, I then was like, once I get it in place, it's going to work itself on the ground over time anyway. So no need to worry about it being super straight right now. We're going to go ahead and get that plate welded on, and we will go from there. I may have to pick this back up tomorrow. Not quite sure yet, but let's get that plate thrown on and see what else we can achieve, because it is currently 9 o'clock at night. All right, so welcome back. Even though it was like 3 seconds for you guys, it was about 3 hours for me. So I kind of got a little ahead of myself. Kind of wish I didn't, but hey, live you learn. So I got the bandsaw demounted from its base. The base is over there now, which it'll probably eventually get cut up for scrap. And well, so I put the legs on. I'm not entirely sure where I last was on the video, but got the legs mounted roughly, which these, for some reason, I didn't do an outside pass, so I might do a quick outside pass. I didn't over here either. What the hell's wrong with me? So everything's technically welded in place. I started pulling measurements, so this is big enough that I can squeeze the bandsaw and the chop saw like I originally intended. However, I was not paying attention when I grabbed this piece of metal. This is a piece of 1/8 inch plate, nothing fancy. Yes, I did my height. However, this plate is actually warped a little bit from being outside in the heat, which normally wouldn't be that big of a deal. However, me trying to make this perfect, it upset me. But nevertheless, I also threw some tabs on the back and the front to keep it from sliding back and forth, hopefully, theoretically. Yes, I did take that and I put it up here and slid it back to where the back stopper is close to in line with the face of this back. The reason I did that is so if I ever decide to take a piece of 2x2 or 2x3 and use it as a guide all the way down, I can now do that while being able to weld on this back lip. So that's a thing. Another thing, when I started looking at this, the handle over here, which is also the spring for basically your adjustment on how much pressure goes, down pressure. I actually notched out up into the 3/8 plate that's under there. I notched all that out. Yes, it's ugly. Please ignore it. But I notched it all out so that way this edge, funny enough, this edge will now go up to this edge. So I've got almost a seamless transaction. The only thing that's realistically left on this part is putting the top sheet on, and then in theory it should be good to go. Other than the obvious, which is mount that on there. I'm definitely gonna have to shim these corners. I do have a shim kit. It's over there somewhere. But I will get it shimmed and in place to where it's level at the top. If it's sitting down just a little bit, that's okay. I really thought about it sitting here, but I would prefer it wasn't. However, I'd rather it be slightly down too low than up too high. Up too high would be a lot more work than if it's too low. Up underneath, I don't know how well you guys are going to see it, I added the 1-inch tubing, the same stuff I used for the legs, straight. Those surprisingly welded straight this way. However, in line with the whole thing, they're a little skewed. How I managed to do that, I have no idea. Actually, this one right here that I'm looking at is pretty straight with it. The back one sits out a little bit, which I was more worried about this up and down. And arguably, it's pretty straight with the whole thing. I did add gussets over here in the front. I just sped weld them because, well, they're just, you know, as long as they got a couple tacks, I think it'll be good enough. But when I added that, with that on top, the back and forth was cut down to a minimum. I was actually very surprised. All right, guys, so welcome back. Obviously, it's been a couple days, and I'll say it's been a couple days. It's been a day. Made some progress on the cut table. I don't quite remember where I left off, but unfortunately, due to me trying to get a lot of other stuff done, I've since completed the table. Which you know, it's whatever. But here she is in all her glory. Yes, I've got my box over here on it. This side over here, from it's either right there or right there over, I didn't weld the top plate down. Did that for a couple reasons, but mostly just due to time. But I threw a gloss black paint on it, on the whole thing. Right here is actually our seam joint from the two plates. These are just under an 8-foot plate, so I had to cut this portion in half, butt weld it together, and then ground it out. But I got all the pieces ground, all the welds ground on the top, and then had welded everything down. For the most part, mock-up went really well until I got down here, and someone did some incorrect math. However, where the actual cutting will be taking place is perfectly straight. Over here, it's like an 1/8 of an inch off, which isn't terrible, but it's not exactly great. Mostly because of the fact that the only way to fix that is, well, cut that table. But I did some test cuts. I did some test cuts on it real quick just to kind of get a feel for it, see how it's gonna react and all that. At some point, I think I'm probably gonna try to cut a little something right here for everything to fall through. Either that or I'll just leave it as is. But the table's in place. It's clamped down over here on one side. I'm glad that I somehow managed to think about this just enough to where this handle does not hit the tabs that I put here to keep this from sliding back and forth. I did have to put a couple washers and a couple pieces of plate on a couple of these corners just to get it perfectly where it needs to be, but I planned for that. I was okay with that. Not a big deal, but everything's welded up. We got the gussets underneath there. I actually opted not to gusset this one for the reason of, I got thinking about it, and it's not really going to see a whole lot of back to forth movement. And I mean, but even then, it's got just a little bit of movement. But anyway, there she is. Pretty much done. There's not really a whole lot left to do other than just use it. I did put a longer piece up here. It seemed to be really, you know, pretty close to straight. But realistically speaking, if I have to put some spacers or something underneath the material at the lower end, it's not going to hurt my feelings. This thing works, and that's all I could ask for. I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you guys have any questions or comments, by all means, ask me down below. I will answer it to my best ability. I'm hoping that 2026 will be the year that we can actually start uploading and editing and the whole 9 yards. I'm really hoping we can do a lot of this YouTube stuff, especially with some of the work I plan on doing. I would really like to start kind of full-blown recording and, you know, editing and really like taking y'all for a daily vlog. I'd really like to be able to do that. But if you guys, like I said, have any questions, any comments, I'm actually open to constructive criticism. But I'm open to all comments about it. You know, if you guys got something you want to add, you know, you're like, hey, why don't you do this? Or, hey, modify this a little bit. Anyway, this will work for what I need it to. It's obviously very bare bones. It's very basic. It's nothing super duper fancy. It will work. It will do what I need it to for the time being. Thank y'all for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.